Good evening. I'm Mike Wallace. Through television control rooms like this one across the land, on monitors like these, hundreds of commercials roll each day. Normally, they are intended to sell products, but this is the campaign season, so now a lot of the commercials you see are intended to package and sell politicians. They are commercials that duplicate by design the various techniques of that collectivity known as Madison Avenue. There is the dignified soft sell.
Nearly half of New York State's budget goes to the 3 R's. Thanks to the 4th R, Rockefeller.
There is the slam your opponent hard sell.
Why doesn't Adlai Stevenson speak out against busing? Why doesn't he denounce those students who force our universities to close? What has Adlai got against the FBI and the Chicago police?
There is the mini musical.
Paul Eggers of Texas, the governor we've needed, the man we want to win. If we all pull together, we'll put the fella in. Paul Eggers.
There is the mini biography.
When a young Californian sets out with his depression savings and in his own lifetime creates jobs and earnings for thousands, products and services for millions of Americans, and still has energy to burn, he must be quite a guy. He is. Norton Simon, Republican for U.S. Senate.
There's the man with a message.
No, I don't live here in New York, but you can bet your boots if I did, I'd plan now to vote for James Buckley for United States Senator.
And there are commercials where the medium is the message. There is even the candidate who buys time to say he can't afford to buy enough time.
Well, I can tell you this, if I had my opponent's money, I wouldn't have to settle for such short commercials.
Now, the use of these campaign commercials, more of them this year than ever before, has caused controversy, calls for reform, exposés in the press, complaints from have-not candidates. A law was even passed by both houses of the Congress and vetoed by the President that would have sharply restricted campaign expenditures on TV. Indeed, the entire use of television to elect politicians has come under closer scrutiny in Campaign 70 than ever before. For better or worse, television has changed the nature of the political process in the United States.
The name of the game today is television in statewide campaign.
Let me put it this way. I don't believe anyone will ever be elected to a major public office again, including mayors of big cities, without the skillful use of television.
Well, from the point of view of the candidate, the most effective medium is the television commercial, because he can tell his own story in his own way on the television commercial.
The danger of this is that you can package a candidate. You put him on in 10 and 20, 30 seconds, 60-second spots, and it may be a real picture of the candidate. It may be a very false picture.
This is the whole point. I think that you could probably run a fictitious person and get an awful lot of votes and never have him surface one time. I think you could create a myth.
We had 6 million political commercial spots in television and radio in 1968. I rather suspect perhaps that figure will be broken this year. And of course, these spots more and more are being professionally developed, packaged as you package deodorants.
And there's something sort of humiliating about reducing a high public office to a series of 20 or 30-second spots with cartoons and canned laughter and all the rest. But the fact is that most political managers, and certainly the candidates, are in this to win. And they do what they think will accomplish that job the best. And I think that television is important today for one reason, because the candidates think it's important. They are the ones who have made the decision themselves that this is the medium, the way, that's where the game is.
CBS reports Campaign 70, Television and Politics, with CBS News correspondent Mike Wallace.
All leading cold remedies that relieve congested noses take one giant step. Those that also lower fever and reduce pain, but don't make you drowsy, take one giant step. Listerine cold tablets. Strong, fast relief so you can stay alert while you're getting better.
Step up, everybody, cause here she comes. Mercury Montego for 71. The size is handy and the styling's nice. A lot of luxury at a real low price.
Mercury, Mercury, better ideas make better cars.
Take the best ideas in intermediate cars, add the room and luxury of a bigger car. Put them all together and there you are. Montego, the better intermediate car.
Mercury, Mercury, better ideas make better cars.
Will Rogers said it 40 years ago. Politics, he said, has got so expensive that it takes lots of money even to get beat with. That was long before television. For the last 20 years, costs have gone up geometrically as the TV tube has become the Pied Piper of politics. Along the way, everybody has complained about it, but like the weather, nobody has done much about it. Well, this fall, the Congress finally tried to. They passed a bill aimed at limiting political expenditures in radio and television. A finger in the dike, somebody called it. Not so, said President Nixon. He said the bill just plugged one hole in a sieve. And last week, he vetoed it. More about that later. For now, we shall explore just how money and television have changed the face of American political campaigning. Our purpose is not to examine the campaign, but the use of TV in the campaign. We begin with the senatorial contest in New York State.
Air and water pollution are getting worse, and the twin plagues of drug addiction and street crime are spreading.
The candidate, James Buckley. The message, law and order, a return to conservatism, all wrapped in the American flag.
Isn't it about time we had a senator? Buckley.
Dick Ottinger joined us in a suit against the Penn Central Railroad.
The candidate, Richard Ottinger. The message, a liberal Democrat, a three-term congressman who gets things done.
It's easy to promise. It's a lot tougher to deliver. Ottinger delivers.
Well, I think in 20 months in the United States Senate, I've done more than Richard Ottinger has done in 6 years in the House of Representatives. I have written into law many of the things he's talking about in his television commercials.
The candidate, Charles Goodell. The message, a liberal independent Republican who deserves to stay in the Senate.
Keep Senator Goodell, Senator Goodell. He's too good to lose.
In the race for United States Senator in New York this year, in the primary and general election, more money will be spent to buy local television time than was spent for all network television in the Kennedy-Nixon presidential campaign 10 years ago. Three major candidates are competing for 6 to 7 million votes in New York State. Television gets to most of them, but it costs a lot. A 30-second political commercial can cost $3,000 or more to run on one station in prime time in the New York metropolitan market. For that $3,000, the television people assure the candidate that his message is getting into nearly 1 million homes. Big spending on television became an issue in the Democratic primary, where a blitz of television commercials got Richard Ottinger the nomination in the first place. Ottinger's heavy purchase of television time, made possible by money parceled out by his mother from a U.S. Plywood Corporation fortune, is still an issue. Did Ottinger buy the nomination? Looking back, the political consultant who produced Ottinger's commercials, David Garth, says television was the only way.
Dick Ottinger used television the same way anybody in this country who could afford to use television did. In California, Norton Simon spent $1,800,000 on television, and he lost. Got 30% of the vote against Murphy in the primary. Dick Ottinger spent well under $1 million, and he won. But if he had not had a record to transmit, he would not have won.
Could you have won the primary, do you think, without the use of television, specifically television commercials?
Basically, I think not. I think that you have to communicate to the public, and today television is the most powerful medium. In a news conference, you get to hit one issue, and you get cut in what you have to say in accordance with the news judgment of the station. In a commercial, you get to say what you have to say the way you want to say it.
I think it's the duty of a United States Senator to get involved in the problems that threaten people in their daily lives.
Television exposure in the primary made Dick Ottinger a familiar name around New York State. When the general election campaign started, he was better known than Charles Goodell, the maverick incumbent senator who was grudgingly nominated by the Republican State Committee. And Ottinger was far better known than the Conservative Party nominee, James Buckley, brother of the sharp-tongued columnist William F. Buckley.
We need more money there.
So Goodell and Buckley had to play catch-up politics via television.
Come on, come on, come on, come on, come on.
The televised efforts to persuade the people to vote for conservative candidate Buckley focus on law and order in the streets and on the college campus. And the American flag behind it all. Television is an emotional medium. The use of the flag is the use of an emotional symbol on an emotional medium.
Well, it symbolizes, as I say, the values for which this country stands. It symbolizes the institutions that we have framed for purposes of governing ourselves, of advancing from where we are to where we want to go. And it sums up all of this in one symbol, as you say, which is part of the symbolic art.
In contrast to 1968, when he ran for the same office with very limited funds, now Buckley seems to be well-financed. It appears that not only Ottinger and Goodell, but also Buckley will be spending some $750,000 apiece this fall on television commercials. About 60% of Buckley's campaign budget goes into television. Sometimes he tries to give his arguments a local tie-in by using pictorial backgrounds in the TV studio.
A woman lying in the street.
What follows is a composite of 5 spots. Same message, only the background is changed.
Crime rates are soaring here in Buffalo. Crime rates are soaring here in Albany. And crime rates are soaring here in New York City, here in Syracuse, and all over America. Crime rates are soaring here in Rochester and all over America. And meanwhile, our politicians continue to make things easier for the lawbreakers and more difficult for the law enforcers.
The implication is that Senator Goodell has not been representing the law-abiding silent majority in New York. Buckley's appeal is Goodell's problem. An incumbent senator is supposed to have the advantage at election time. But ever since Governor Rockefeller appointed him 2 years ago to fill out the unexpired term of Robert Kennedy, Goodell has been alienating many Republicans.
I have stood with the president when he's right and against him when I think he's wrong. I think that's the kind of a senator the people of New York want.
Until recently, Goodell was unable to dramatize any issue except money to distinguish him from Ottinger. But sometimes in politics, you get an issue from people who attack you.
Senator Goodell has sought flamboyantly and ceaselessly to openly divorce himself from our president and from the Nixon administration. I will not support a radical liberal no matter what party he belongs to.
Vice President Agnew did not speak publicly in New York, but he flew in for a private luncheon to help raise money for Buckley commercials. Goodell is hoping to capitalize on Agnew's purge attempt.
Now, what the vice president is doing is going out and labeling everybody as extremists. He is generating a passionate disrespect for difference of opinion in this country. Now, if he succeeds in making us all disrespect the difference of opinion of others, we're going to come apart. And that is even more dangerous than repression. And that's why I have spoken out against it.
Don't let Agnew purge Senator Goodell. He's too good to lose.
While Goodell criticizes Ottinger's use of commercials, he says he himself has to do much the same thing.
If I just neglected television and let them have it, I would lose. It's that simple. That's how important the media is. And it's really quite an agonizing thing for a man in public life. I've been 11 years in the Congress, 2 of them in the Senate. And now I find in order to communicate my record, what I stand for, what I've done and what I've tried to do, I have to rely on experts. It's almost like putting my record up and having to show it through a prism.
The experts not only advise on commercials, they also strive to get their men on news broadcasts. So the candidates will attend a Pulaski Day parade, visit a hospital, or call a news conference.
Shows that Mr. Ottinger will actually exceed in his Senate campaign the $1 million television blitz which catapulted him.
Each headquarters watches the evening news intently.
And at Midtown.
And at Ottinger headquarters, they videotape record items of special interest.
Shows that Mr. Ottinger will actually exceed in his Senate campaign the $1 million television blitz which catapulted him from obscurity as a congressman from Westchester County. I think that news, 6 o'clock, 11 o'clock news, is very, very big. I think the newspapers are very, very big. I think the spots are big. But I don't think, for example, that you can sell a man with a TV commercial if he doesn't appear on the news.
Television debates, like news, are carried free of charge, but unlike news, There is a question whether the size of the audience is worth the risks that go with a debate.
In the primary, there were 9 debates on television that Dick Ottinger took part in. And everybody says, let's debate the issues. We had 9 debates. It was seen by less than 1%. The total rating for all the debates was less than 1% of the television viewers in the state.
Ratings are low in part because stations place debates in marginal time or opposite popular programs. The World Series competed with this debate. Stations and networks are reluctant to preempt shows that make money. But there's another inhibiting factor. The Federal Communications Act requires that in all special broadcasts, each candidate for the same office must be given equal and comparable time. This would give minor party office seekers equality in debate with Republicans and Democrats. And many stations say that this would obscure rather than illuminate the major issues.
You're having your daughter's wedding reception at home, and behind those polite smiles, the guests wonder.
Think she'll do it today? They say she always does.
At her daughter's reception? She wouldn't dare.
She's got to be kidding.
She is. This is unbelievable.
But there's nothing daring in what you can do. You can always set your table right from the dishwasher. Because now something makes everything come out spotless as can be. Dishwasher All. It's more than detergent. It's a detergent and rinse agent, both in one. A 2-in-1 combination that gets dishes, silver, glasses, detergent clean, rinse agent spotless. So spotless, everything dazzles. That's because Dishwasher All has a built-in rinse agent. Clean so spotless, you can set your table right from the dishwasher. Dishwasher All.
The political smear is as old as politics, but this year there are charges that the TV commercial is being used to smear candidates. So the political spot has become a major issue as well as a major factor. In South Carolina, for example, the Republican candidate for governor, Albert Watson, was accused of racism after running a commercial that began, "Are we going to be ruled by the bloc? Look what it did in Watts, in the nation's capital." In Indiana, the Republican senatorial candidate Richard Raudebush ran a commercial linking his Democratic opponent, Senator Vance Hartke, with the Viet Cong. After Hartke protested bitterly, the spot was withdrawn, but only after it had been given wide circulation. In Illinois, Republican Senator Ralph Smith refused to withdraw commercials, despite protests by his Democratic opponent, Adlai Stevenson III, that they were false and misleading. Here's one of them.
Yippie agitator Jerry Rubin sees policemen as pigs. Adlai Stevenson regards some policemen as stormtroopers in blue. U.S. Senator Smith puts it this way.
I believe that the police are on our side. I simply don't understand how any responsible person could think otherwise.
U.S. Senator Ralph Tyler Smith. Through him, the majority speaks.
Senator Smith has strongly defended his commercials. He has termed them reasonable and fair. He says they raise issues that his opponent had ducked before the commercials were run. And, of course, this year, money in TV has been made a major issue. In Ohio, a comparatively obscure but rich businessman mounted a television blitz in the Democratic primary for the U.S. Senate. And by so doing, he managed to topple a national hero.
If you had to put in one word the reason that Metzenbaum beat you in the primary, what might that word be?
Money. Very straightforward, because money lets you buy TV time. That's the main thing.
How important was television in defeating John Glenn in the primary here?
It was the whole ball game, Mike. It was everything. It was the reason why John Glenn lost.
Stan Wyman, John Glenn's campaign press secretary, tells freely, if somewhat bitterly, why his man lost this year's Democratic senatorial primary in Ohio to a virtual unknown.
While John was talking to, say, 50 people at a time, the other side was talking to hundreds of thousands of people at a time.
Howard Metzenbaum, Democrat for the United States Senate.
He was on every TV station that we could determine at least 2-3 times a night, every night of the week. He was buying TV, a saturation campaign that wouldn't give up for anything.
Remember it, Metzenbaum for the U.S. Senate.
The defeat of John Glenn in the primary was a stunning upset. Before the campaign, he was known and recognized by 95% of the voters in Ohio. A huge identification factor, as the image makers would say. His opponent, Howard Metzenbaum, had an identification factor of less than 10%. The only way to close the gap, Metzenbaum and his advisors understood, was television. And television exposure on the order he needed to win costs money, big money. But Howard Metzenbaum had it, and he was prepared to spend it. And often, to the tune of at least $300,000 in TV time.
The money that we spent, we believe, performed the function that had to be performed. If I hadn't spent some money, that is, my family hadn't contributed to our campaign, the people of Ohio would never know the man who's sitting in this seat at this very moment. And to me, the question is spending the money to get your message across to the people so that they know who you are and what you are. It isn't just a matter of saying Jell-O, Jell-O, Jell-O 1,000 times so that the name Metzenbaum comes through that often. It's a question of what does Metzenbaum stand for? What's he believe in?
I guess you did have to say Jell-O, 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 Metzenbaum, Metzenbaum, Metzenbaum 1,000 times because not enough Ohioans knew who Metzenbaum was.
Absolutely correct.
John Glenn's primary campaign was notable for its lack of television commercials. He spent about $1 for every 10 Metzenbaum did to buy airtime. Some people, including the man who made Metzenbaum's commercials, Charles Guggenheim, think it was bad strategy.
Glenn said, I don't need money for television. I'm not going to lose this. And Glenn could have raised that money, and he could have been on television. And so money beat him only because he didn't bother to raise it.
I wish that were true. No, I tried and tried and tried and tried to get money, and the people just didn't believe I needed money. They thought I was such a shoo-in that I heard 100 times, don't worry about the primary. Come back and we're going to raise a real war chest for the fall, and we're really going to put you in the general campaign in the fall. And as a result, I just tried to get out and make more meetings and shake more hands and go to more people and try and get on more free TV and more free radio shows than anybody else in the campaign, and you just can't do it that way these days. Politics today is money and television time.
The commercials Metzenbaum used to defeat John Glenn in the primary were mostly the type called confrontation. The candidate is filmed arguing, talking, answering ordinary voters who are frequently critical. Many image makers this year have adopted this technique. They feel that it makes their candidate seem sharper, harder, more decisive.
Blame you. Well, we blame you.
But I'm not a politician. I'm a businessman.
I know, but I mean...
I'm a businessman. I've been a successful businessman, and I just said, damn it, I'm tired of what's going on. And I want to change some things in this world.
The commercial makers quite naturally pick those parts of these confrontations which make their man look good. The commercials worked well for Metzenbaum in the primary. We asked his image maker, Charles Guggenheim, whether the commercials in the general election would be different.
Absolutely no difference.
None?
None.
In other words, you were introducing Metzenbaum to the people of Ohio in the primary.
Right.
Now they know who he is.
Right.
And you're running him against Taft. Same commercials?
Not the same ones, but there's nothing different in the style. There's nothing different in what's revealed.
If Metzenbaum's commercials in the general election are like the ones which won in the primary, it may be because he has the same problem to overcome. His opponent in the general election carries the best-known political name in Ohio, Robert Taft. Member of Congress, son of a famous senator, grandson of a president. If John Glenn was known by 95% of the voters in Ohio, Taft's name must be known by 99%. But Robert Taft's problems are not the same as those he had in his primary against Governor James Rhodes. And his commercials are not the same either. His commercial maker, Robert Goodman of Baltimore, explains.
In the primary campaign, our objective was to show a vital, important, active congressman. We were trying to show that Governor Rhodes is a great activist, isn't the only man who is a man of action, that our man was too. We wanted to compensate, in a sense, for a feeling about Bob Taft that he was kind of quiet and in the corner, which was not true. So we were selling a personality idea, and it was a more alive, visceral type of thing.
You see it, you know it, you feel it. Ohio's next senator is a Republican who can win in November. And Bob Taft is the one man who can do it. Waiting only now for your very important vote on May 5th that will make it possible.
The senator we elect must be our very best for America.
In the general election, we're doing something which for us is rather unusual. We are unemotionalizing our candidate. We're showing him exactly as he is.
Well, President Nixon...
Foreign policy, Bob Taft.
He has now adopted policy I've long advocated. I took a position backing an irreversible policy of withdrawal from Vietnam. Not a cut-and-run policy, because I don't think responsibly we can do that. And if we did do it, it would just lead, I think, to additional threats and additional war out there. We've heard an awful lot about the making of foreign policy. I want to make one thing clear. We can't make foreign policy in the street.
What we need is responsibility in the Senate, and that's Bob Taft.
So in a sense, you've cooled him off a little bit.
No, we have not tampered with him in the general. This is the difference.
You tampered in the primary?
We focused in the primary, Mike. There's this thing about tampering. I don't think you can create a virtue that doesn't exist. I think what we do in our business is we try to dramatize those virtues that do exist. Now, of course, by dramatizing and focusing, we exclude less attractive qualities or qualities that we believe will not inure to his benefit. But it's not really tampering. I think it's more a matter of dramatizing.
Fellow who makes your spots, Bob Goodman, and commercials for other candidates as well, says that television spots represent an emotional appeal rather than a reasoned one. Matter of fact, I think he's a little distressed that yours are as reasoned as they are.
Well, that's perhaps his approach. I don't know. That certainly isn't an approach that he's used in my spots, I don't feel.
What?
An emotional approach. I think he's used one based on what my views are, because I happen to think that the people want an issue-oriented campaign, and the only way I know how to run, frankly, is on the issues.
So you believe that the real Bob Taft comes through in your spots?
Well, I hope it does.
Image makers like Robert Goodman and Charles Guggenheim come high. Both Taft and Metzenbaum are extremely wealthy men, and they could afford the tab. But they're severely restricted by federal and Ohio law in what each can personally spend in the election. And they agree it's difficult this year to get others to put up the huge sums television campaigning demands. Perhaps that's why Taft proposed limiting television time buying to the 7 cents a voter called for in the election reform bill. Perhaps Metzenbaum accepted to get rid of money as a campaign issue. But perhaps, in a strange way, it was also a matter of pride, not between the candidates, but between their image makers.
I'll tell you, I had a lot to making that decision. Or I'd to say I was one of the persons who made the decision. Taft made the offer, and within 4 hours we accepted it. And the candidate called me and said, should we accept it? I said, absolutely, we should accept it.
Why?
Because I believe that if we have equal television and equal exposure, that we will win.
I gather there's a fight between Goodman and Guggenheim as well as Taft and Metzenbaum.
Yes, I think that's true. I guess we're all prima donnas. I guess we all think our work is good. And we don't like to be beat by the other fellow on the advertising level. If the candidate's going to lose the election for a political reason, that's one thing. But it would be heresy for us to see our man go down because he picked the wrong advertising agent or films company. That would hurt us.
It should be noted at this point that there are actually 4 candidates for the U.S. Senate seat from Ohio, 7 candidates in New York. But this is a report on the uses of television in the campaigns and not on the races themselves. And the fact is that for lack of money, you almost never see commercials for minor party candidates.
Mercury Comet, the new and better small car. We had an idea that 4 doors might come in handy. So the new Mercury Comet comes with 2 doors or 4 doors like this one. We had an idea a small car should have some get up and go. So Mercury Comet has an optional V8 engine. Mercury Comet.
Better ideas make better cars.
At the sign of the cat.
Anywhere. You're going to gargle with Listerine.
I haven't got bad breath.
I know. But every time it snows, it seems you guys catch colds.
Yeah, but so do you and Dad.
And we can't stop them. But this year, we're going to all fight back with lots of sleep, good food, and Listerine twice a day.
That means I can't stay home from school.
Exactly. That's the whole idea. Now, last one into the bathroom is a big ape.
Bet big apes don't have to gargle.
No, only little apes.
This cold season, fight back with Listerine Antiseptic.
Did you ever think you'd see the day you could do your most delicate hand washables in an automatic washer? Now you can. Under the regular agitator, in this Westinghouse washer, is a hand wash agitator, specially designed for your delicate washables. I'm Frank Gifford. Ask for the washer with both regular and hand wash agitator. Compare. You will buy Westinghouse. The juiciest way to broil is to broil both sides at once. Only the Westinghouse range has two broiling elements, top and bottom. So, more of the natural juices are sealed inside, making any meat taste just great. And broiling takes half the time. You'll find everything you're looking for in a Westinghouse self-cleaning electric range. Compare all the features. You'll buy Westinghouse. You can be sure if it's Westinghouse.
Richard Nixon is now in the middle of a most wide-ranging campaign tour any president has ever made in an off-year election. 35 states. A major goal to be seen on television with his party's candidates. At each jet whistle stop, crowds of hundreds or thousands are magnified into audiences of millions on the evening news, and it's free exposure. The president will climax his campaigning by appearing on an hour-long television spectacular the Friday night before election, for which the Republicans will pay nearly $200,000. So much a part of our experience has it become that it's hard to realize how new an instrument of the political campaign the television commercial is. They really began only in 1948, when Harry Truman ran for his second term. The audience was small, the impact marginal, the technique primitive, the manner diffident, the message oblique.
You, the people, choose your representatives by voting at the polls in free elections. That is our right, guaranteed us by our Constitution.
There was only the unexpressed hope that the voter would be wise enough to pick Harry Truman. By 1952, the TV sets in use had greatly increased, and with them the importance of paid political broadcasts. The technique was still March of Time.
And in launching the attack across the English Channel that broke the back of the Axis powers. Ike led the march from D-Day to VE Day.
The plan was to present Ike the Invincible to the electorate. The most dramatic and effective use of political TV that year was not part of the plan. Ike's running mate, Richard Nixon, on a half-hour broadcast that cost the Republican Party over $75,000, denying he was the beneficiary of a slush fund.
One other thing I probably should tell you, because if I don't, they'll probably be saying this about me, too. We did get something, a gift, after the election. You know what it was? It was a little Cocker Spaniel dog in a crate that he'd sent all the way from Texas. Black and white, spotted. And our little girl, Tricia, the 6-year-old, named it Checkers.
By 1956, TV techniques were advancing.
In the 1952 campaign, the general complained about the cost of living. He promised his television audience,
people can afford less butter, less fruit, less bread, less milk. Yes, it's time for a change.
How's that again, General?
Yes, it's time for a change.
This is Estes Kefauver. The General's promise to bring down prices was another broken promise.
In 1960, debate between the presidential candidates was the big innovation, and one candidate packaged portions of the debate into his TV commercials.
If we fail to move ahead, if we fail to develop sufficient military and economic and social strength here in this country, then I think that the tide could begin to run against us.
By 1964, techniques had been refined, if that's the word, to make the spot a weapon. Barry Goldwater was identified with the apocalypse.
On October 24th, 1963, Barry Goldwater said of the nuclear bomb, merely another weapon. Merely another weapon. Vote for President Johnson. The stakes are too high for you to stay home.
By 1968, political television was big business. Well over $50 million was spent overall, and the biggest spenders were the backers of Richard Nixon.
American youth today has its fringes, but that's part of the greatness of our country. I have great faith in American youth. The youth of today can change the world. I think that we're going to go forward to a great age for all the people in the world.
I would like to ask you, though, what you would consider the major requirements for your Secretary of Agriculture.
In 1968, too, another innovation was tried, the controlled discussion with the questioners picked by the candidate's producer. Roger Ailes was that producer, and in the book, The Selling of the President, he was given a good share of the credit for the successful format. This year, he has worked for, among others, the election of Indiana Republican Richard Raudebush to the U.S. Senate, and Massachusetts Republican Governor Francis Sargent. In your estimation, is television the single most important factor in a winning political campaign?
Well, let me put it this way. I don't believe anyone will ever be elected to a major public office again, including mayors of big cities, without the skillful use of television.
And that skillful use, is that an illumination of the issues or an emotional sell of the man involved?
I think both. I think both. I don't think you can isolate one or the other. I think that there's an emotional reaction to what you see on the screen, regardless of what it is, whether it's the Rose Parade or somebody running for state office. The problem is that television, being instant sight and sound and a reaction medium, and an emotional medium. The best moments on television have been emotional. Jack Parr crying and walking off the air is still remembered. The Kennedy funeral. Those emotional moments are magnified. Richard Nixon's press conference. Those are the moments. So it is that kind of a medium. And the problem is now that we are relying, and perhaps too much, on television, and particularly too much, perhaps, on spot announcements, to get it's like having instant breakfast. You know, we can't have instant elections. We still have to read the position papers. We still have to read the national magazines. We still have to listen to the commentators. You can't be spoon-fed.
Joseph Napolitan is another well-known political image maker. He says he hires out to Democrats only, and only to Democrats he likes. This year, they include Governor John Burns of Hawaii and Kevin White, mayor of Boston, running for governor of Massachusetts. In 1968, Napolitan's main political account was Hubert Humphrey.
You ran Hubert Humphrey's campaign. When I say you ran his campaign, you ran the media end of it. You really went after Spiro Agnew in the campaign. There was one spot in particular in which you simply put the name of Agnew up there on the screen and had a fella laughing, the sound of a man laughing. Now, what about the morality of that? After all, this fella is running for Vice President of the United States. You may disagree with him, but do you ridicule a potential Vice President, potential President?
I guess we did. I mean, whether it's proper or not.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
If I had thought it was improper, I wouldn't have done it. No.
The problem of recognition of a brand new candidate, how do you use television to do that?
Sometimes you have to give him more exposure and depth than you would a candidate who is well known to start with. You know, there's a young fellow in Iowa named Ed Mezvinsky who's running for Congress. He's a state representative. Now, Ed's biggest liability is his name. It's a difficult name to pronounce. He's a very bright, attractive, articulate young man. But Mezvinsky is a name lots of people have trouble with. So rather than trying to hide it or disguise it, we capitalized on it.
Ed Mezvinsky, is that how you say it?
Ed Medvinsky.
Ed Mezvinsky. Ed Mezvinsky.
Ed Mezvinsky. Edward Mezvinsky.
Ed Mezvinsky.
I can't say it. Ed Mezvinsky.
Ed Mezvinsky. Mezvinsky?
People aren't sure how to say Ed Mezvinsky's name.
But we are sure of what Ed Mezvinsky will stand for in Congress.
I'm voting for Ed Mezvinsky.
Did he win?
He won the primary, and we'll know soon if he won the general.
Of course, a fellow like Jerry Della Femina, who is a well-known television or advertising man, says he doesn't want to get into politics because you are so often selling a phony item. You sell it, and then he may not deliver at all what he sets out to suggest that he's going to deliver.
Well, that's the difference between politics and government, you see. After he's elected, that's government. I don't know anything about government.
In other words, all you're really interested in is electing candidates.
Electing candidates, that's my business. Electing candidates, the electoral process, the political process that ends on election day.
Yeah, well, you're a gun for hire, in a sense.
I would call that once in England.
And?
I guess it's probably true.
David Garth works mainly for Democrats, although he ran the TV campaign for New York's Republican Mayor John Lindsay last year. This year, his candidates, in addition to Richard Ottinger, include Adlai Stevenson III for Senator in Illinois and John Tunney for Senator in California. I asked Garth if there is nothing immoral in buying all the TV time a candidate can pay for.
Well, I don't think you should have to buy television time. I think television time should be supplied on an equal basis to all the candidates in any race. I do think it's an obvious advantage to have money. If all things are equal, it's an obvious advantage to have money. I mean, the Kennedys proved that successfully. In this state, the Lehmans proved it. Abel Harriman proved it. Nelson Rockefeller proves it every 4 years. I mean, Nelson Rockefeller, I'm not commenting whether the governor should or should not be elected, but Nelson Rockefeller has continuously outspent every candidate, not by $800,000, but by millions of dollars. And everybody's known about it. All of a sudden this year, TV's become very, very, very popular. Everybody's looking, with a very close eye at television commercials. Now, whether that's right or wrong, I would say, there is, after 12 years in office, there may be something to reconsider about how you spend money in political campaigns.
Robert Goodman didn't exactly make Spiro Agnew a household word, but he did make the commercials when Agnew ran for governor of Maryland in 1966. This year, besides Robert Taft, he has handled the gubernatorial campaigns of Republicans John Eckert in Florida and Paul Eggers in Texas. Goodman is the prototype of the image maker.
We don't think the television medium in controlled television is a matter of expressing ideas as much as expressing an attitude about a candidate. We want our candidate to be liked more than understood. He'll be understood in his news releases, in his public statements, in his live debates, where he's pressed to answer specific questions. But we're not reaching at that level. We're reaching for the heart rather than the mind.
In the case of Spiro Agnew, now you ran his, or you didn't run his campaign, but you did his spots when he ran for governor of Maryland?
Yes, I did, Mike.
What did you do then?
Well,
because he wasn't really that well known.
Mr. Agnew was not well known at all, and I think that campaign had our mark on it. A lot of music. Music, yes. We think music is a very emotional selling tool. We think music captures the spirit of the campaign. And I just happen to be musically inclined, and I listen to, my ear tells me, I think, what ought to be done.
My kind of man, said Agnew is. My kind of man, said Agnew is. A great new talent for governor. And what's more, he's your kind of man, said Agnew is. Taking your stand.
What in the world has music got to do with political substance? Now, you write music and you like music in your spots when you can get it in there. But why?
Well, we think every campaign has an essential spirit to it. There's a certain there's an essence to a campaign. And we feel a lot of times that could be captured musically.
You know, Rob Goodman, that you image makers, you television filmmakers, all of you, Guggenheim and Goodman and Roger Ailes and Napolitan and that whole crowd.
Roger's quite a boy.
You're accused of selling politicians like soap or mouthwash. And in a sense, you are making that same kind of emotional appeal that is used to sell beer or baby food.
Well, I think people selling is such a new idea, Mike, and it's such a different thing than a product. A product is run for a long period of time. You can test it. You can pre-test your approaches. Just the whole mechanics are rather different. In people selling, I don't think it's packaging the guy quite as much as it is in product selling. I think in product selling we invent little slogans and little formulae that are very deceptive. I think it's a little more honest in this business. But of course, you're right in one attitude, that we are trying to show what's good. We are trying to conceal what is not so good. We are trying to dramatize the things that we think will sell. That's true. We are selling.
Charles Guggenheim makes spots and campaign biographies mainly for liberal Democrats. This year, in addition to Howard Metzenbaum, they include Senators Albert Gore and Philip Hart and would-be New York Governor Arthur Goldberg. This year, he also took on Republican millionaire Norton Simon in an unsuccessful primary run for the Senate from California.
Mr. Guggenheim, more and more people are questioning the propriety, even the morality, of the way that candidates are sold currently on television. Does your conscience ever bother you?
No. No.
Because?
Because I believe in the candidates that I work for.
All right, let's say that there are candidates who perhaps aren't all that good. Are you hurt about the consciences of some of your colleagues? You know what I'm saying.
I can't, you know, I don't think I see as much of what my colleagues do as you do.
It's a matter of considerable concern and conversation, and I'm sure that you and your colleagues...
I've heard of some campaigns that, if accurately described, I would be very upset with.
Because they do what?
They have used visual demagoguery.
On balance, has the use of television in politics helped or hurt the democratic process?
I would take the position, if I have to answer yes or no, that it has helped.
Because?
Because I think for the first time, and I think if you looked at it, we're getting new, fresh, unknown people into politics that have never been in politics before. Without television, the process was too long and too tedious. We wouldn't have a Kennedy. We wouldn't have a McCarthy. We wouldn't have a Duffy in Connecticut. We wouldn't have a number of very strong reform people. I think those are the pluses. The minuses are the demagoguery, which television can exploit better than any other media.
Baby face, you've got the cutest little baby face.
I treat her rotten, you know what I mean? But I let her touch the face once in a while, and she's happy. Look, enough is enough. They love the face, you know what I mean? You gotta get this. Prasanna's new Ultra Chrome blade. It bullies your beard, but babies your face.
The remarkable new Ultrachrome blade goes chrome one better. The edge is sealed on electronically to stay sharper, to bully your beard, but baby your face. It's the smoothest shave ever invented, the baby face shave.
You've got the cutest little baby face.
I'm dynamite with the dames.
Get the Ultrachrome baby face shave, only from Prasanna.
They can't keep their hands off the face.
Congressional Quarterly began a report on the political image makers last May with this sentence. Professional campaign management, they said, is the most lucrative element of American politics in 1970. Howard Metzenbaum told me that he had paid about $100,000 for the services of Charles Guggenheim, and that is over and above the cost of buying TV time. And Metzenbaum considered it a bargain. A whole new craft has grown up in the last decade, most spectacularly in the last 4 years. A Congressional Quarterly survey showed that almost 100 firms were handling major candidates in 1970. How effective their efforts are, except to their own prosperity, of course, has never really been scientifically measured. If a TV campaign is launched for a brand of soap, the advertiser can measure his increase of sales with some precision. It's much harder to determine what factors influence a voter's choice. Still, the spending and the commercial image making go on. It was concern about the cost, principally, that caused the Congress to pass the bill limiting TV expenditures. However, President Nixon, in vetoing that bill, said it would be difficult, in many instances impossible, to enforce such a law. Well, John Glenn, who lost his primary race in Ohio, is no partisan of President Nixon. But he agrees that the proposed law wouldn't do much good.
I don't want to sound overly cynical, but I think it's a charade and a farce. Now, that's pretty drastic.
Why?
I think it's a charade and a farce for this reason. We are not willing now to enforce existing law in this country. We have law right now that says a man will not spend, in Ohio, more than $5,000 on his own candidacy for the Senate. Yet candidates bypass this and admitting it under oath that they give hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars to their own family to give back to to the man's campaign.
Glenn has his own proposals for reforms. Chief among them, he feels that each state should have its own central office to supervise campaign expenditures, into which all money a candidate raises must be placed, and from which all the candidate's bills must be paid. That way, he says, office seekers would be prevented from doing what they do now, prevented from finding ways to raise and spend huge sums under the table without ever reporting it. Many Americans, not just defeated candidates, share John Glenn's feeling that there are defects in the present system, but there is no agreement on a recipe for reform. We asked four men directly concerned with the problem for their views. I talked with the chairman of the Federal Communications Commission, who was formerly chairman of the Republican National Committee, Dean Birch, and with the most outspoken dissident FCC member, Nicholas Johnson. My colleague David Shoemaker interviewed the present Republican National Chairman, Rogers Morton, who led efforts to persuade President Nixon to veto the campaign spending bill, and Democratic National Chairman Lawrence O'Brien.
Mr. O'Brien, what are the basic changes that you think have to be made in the use of television in campaigns?
Well, first of all, I regret the president saw fit to veto the legislation that would have limited the expenditures of money for television in campaigns. Secondly, it seems to me that we must do something to ensure that campaign time is limited in terms of the length of a campaign. Thirdly, it seems that we must eliminate the use of television spots as such, the packaging of candidates. The time segments, in my judgment, in a campaign should be no less than 15 minutes on television, and it should be live, direct exposure to the candidates, the issues, the goals, the party's positions. Unfortunately, the president does not share this view in whole or in part, and I regret very, very much that he saw fit to veto legislation passed overwhelmingly by the Congress that would have been a giant step forward in this area.
I would provide, as I have proposed, that 1/3 of all prime time on all three networks be devoted to programming other than the lowest common denominator commercially laden fare that we get now. Now, during election times, this time could then be made available for political purposes. At other times, it could be used for other educational, public affairs, cultural purposes. I would make the time available to candidates in terms of roughly their support in the electorate in the past election, or number of signatures on petitions, things of that sort, as they do in other civilized countries. There's nothing really that difficult about working out these formulas. I would permit them to use the techniques of propaganda and manipulation, but I would require that they follow that up immediately after with at least 50% as much time additional, where the candidate must appear in a format over which he has no control, where you are asking him questions in an interview, where he's participating in a debate, or something of that sort. I would prohibit the purchase of any time, and I would prohibit the use of time in less than 5-minute segments.
I think when we limit television cost, we begin to make some very specific invasions into the proposition of free speech. You're discriminating, say, television, the media of television, versus the newspaper, versus other types of communication that are available. This worries me. This seems to be a Band-Aid on a very serious thing and not really the cure for the problem. I'm always apprehensive of any laws that ban freedom of expression. And this, what you're trying to do is you're trying to put some kind of artificial guidelines or disciplines into the campaigning process that you are unwilling to put into any other aspects of American television life. You don't, providing it's not obscene and providing it's hasn't got any real detrimental characteristics about it, you don't limit your commercial customers in the way they present their products to the American people, but you're saying we want to limit the way that a candidate for public office presents himself to the people, and this begins to tread on very sacred soil.
I happen to not subscribe to the theory that because there is a necessity for discussion of ideas and counter ideas, which I agree with, that you ought to destroy commercial television so that you can have nothing but discussion of great ideas all day. I happen to think that our system is quite a good one. Because, after all, television in politics is not just the slick commercial. Television in politics includes the news interview, the on-the-spot coverage of the speech, the documentary, and the other things that actually do penetrate.
But
I think that our citizenry is better informed about elections today than they were 30 years ago.
Everybody seems to talk about television and politics and money.
Yes.
But the fact of the matter is that not very much is going to be done about it.
I'm inclined to think that is pretty much in the long run what will happen. This is, after all, we're talking about television now, but over the history of this country, we've talked about newspapers, we've talked about print, we've talked about handbills, we've talked about money and talked about it. But it is just a very, very difficult problem, because for every gain you make in this field, you may have an offsetting loss. It's tough.
And money will continue to talk.
Money talks, yes.
There are ways by which money could be made to talk less decisively. One would be for TV stations and networks on their own initiative to refuse political commercials or paid political broadcasts. But the spots add up to an estimated $50 million in revenue this year. So this is not a likely possibility. Or the system could be changed. In British campaigns, by law, no person or party may buy commercial time. The two major parties, Labour and Conservative, are allocated precisely equal time, 5 periods of 10 minutes each, to make their pitch in any way they choose. Both British networks, the commercial and the public, are required to carry those messages free. But no lawmaker here has even suggested such a drastic reform. A more modest proposal for reform was contained in the bill the president vetoed. It would have suspended the equal time limitations to allow debate between the major party candidates for president. Mr. Nixon didn't mention this as a reason for his veto, but skeptics have suggested it was a major factor. Lyndon Johnson didn't want to debate in 1964. Mr. Nixon avoided debates in 1968. And there is no evidence that he has had a change of heart about 1972. So, the chances are that the political use of television will go on just about the way it has in this political year, or even more so. Unless, of course, the American voter thinks he's being had and tells the politicians so. This is Mike Wallace. Good night.
Spots. Is that what you're after? Spots or this? Cascade's spotless look. Amazingly spotless because Cascade has chlorine. Cascade makes water sheet away. Here it is in slow motion. Cascade eliminates drops that cause spots. Leaves your glasses beautifully spotless. Get this, Cascade's look of spotlessness. Put Cascade in your dishwasher. Be a spotless homemaker.
Bet you miss your mommy now that she's working.
She still picks me up at school.
Oh, new jumper?
It's not new.
Mommy sends it out.
We washed it in this.
Salvo.
Mommy lets me drop them in the washing machine. It's easy.
That's all you do?
No, then we go do other things together.
Oh, hello, Grace.
Pre-measured salvo for women with lots to do.
CBS reports Campaign 70, Television and Politics.
Two weeks from tonight, at 6:30 Eastern Time, 3:30 Pacific Time, CBS News will begin its broadcast of complete results of Election 70, beginning with a special edition of the CBS Evening News. Walter Cronkite at the anchor desk, along with Eric Severide, Mike Wallace, Roger Mudd, Dan Rather, Bill Stott, and David Shoemaker, will bring you reports on all key races. That's 2 weeks from tonight.